Hey, Stan Deaton with the Georgia Historical Society. Welcome back. Well, I don't need to tell you, April 2020 has been a gloomy month, and I thought it would be a good time to look back 75 years to another April, the last week of April in 1945, and the events that came out of Europe that led to the fall of the Third Reich and the end of World War II in Europe. It began on April 28th with the capture and execution of the Italian dictator Benito Mussolini. He and his longtime mistress were captured by Italian partisans. They were publicly executed and their bodies strung up publicly at a square in Milan, Italy. Now there was great public celebration. Their bodies were violently and horribly mutilated, and the photographs of this went out around the world, including in Berlin, where Adolf Hitler was 50 feet below the surface of the Chancellery in the Führer bunker. The very next day, on April 29, 1945, the Americans liberated the notorious Nazi concentration camp in Dachau. This had been one of the first concentration camps set up by the Nazis in March of 1933, just 2 months after they took power. And over 160,000 people had gone through that camp, 32,000 deaths. It was the scene of some of the most gruesome Nazi medical experiments. The photograph of the famous Nazi death train came out of Dachau. Again, broadcast all over the world as the horrors of the Holocaust began to come to light, and there was great joy at the liberation of Dachau. The very next day, April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler and the last top Nazis were literally hunkered down in the bunker of Berlin as the Soviet army moved in from the east, as the Allied American and British army moved in from the west. Hitler vowed not to go out like Benito Mussolini. He did not want to surrender to the Americans or the Soviets and be captured or be executed and have his body dragged through the streets of Berlin in some sort of public demonstration. And so on the evening of April 28th, he married his longtime mistress, Eva Braun. 30 hours later, on the afternoon of April 30th, they swallowed cyanide tablets, and then Hitler shot himself in the head. Other Nazis in the bunker took the two bodies out into the open air of the garden of the Chancellery, 50 feet above, and set the bodies on fire. Hitler had left in charge his longtime minister of propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, and the next day, May 1st, 1945, Goebbels and his wife poisoned their 6 children and then killed themselves. Their bodies were taken outside as well and burned, but none of these bodies burned very well in the open air, and the Soviets, when they captured the bunker in Berlin, were able to capture all of the bodies as well. Hitler and Braun, Goebbels and his wife, and their children, and they scurried them away and buried them. And over the next 6 to 8 months, they were exhumed and reburied many times until finally, in February of 1946, at a KGB installation in Magdeburg, Germany, all the bodies were buried for what they thought would be the last time. Forward almost 25 years, and in 1970, as the Soviets got ready to hand over this installation to the East Germans, Yuri Andropov, who was the head of the KGB, who would eventually be the Soviet premier, the Soviets did not want this site to become a shrine for neo-Nazis, as they feared it would. And so Andropov ordered all of the bodies exhumed, burned to a cinder, pulverized into dust, and thrown into a tributary of the Elbe River nearby. And that is exactly what happened on April 4th, 1970, the final end of the leaders of the Third Reich. So 75 years ago this week, the world got a little bit brighter as the lights of the Third Reich began to go out. A good thing to remember in the dark times we're living through right now. Stay safe, stay strong. I'm Stan Deaton with the Georgia Historical Society, and as always, thank you for watching.